Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to embark on a completely mind-bending architectural zoom right into the microscopic building blocks of life itself. I mean, if you've ever stopped to wonder exactly how biological life organizes itself from these tiny, literally invisible units into massive, living, breathing creatures, well, you're in the perfect place. We're going to strip away all the textbook complexity and just look directly at the fascinating cellular machinery that makes life possible. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our structured roadmap for today. We're kicking things off with the big picture, and then we'll zoom way in for the anatomy of a cell. After that, we'll look at plants and bacteria, and finally, wrap up by exploring the specialists. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the big picture, scale and hierarchy. Before we even think about peeking inside a cell, we kind of need to completely reset our understanding of scale. Just let this number sink in for a second. 40 trillion. It's estimated that you, as a human being, have up to 40 trillion cells in your body. I mean, that is just a staggering, mind-boggling number. They are so incredibly numerous that any one single cell on its own has essentially zero impact on how you function. A single cell is, honestly, highly insignificant by itself, and that creates this brilliant biological necessity. Cells absolutely must group together in vast, organized numbers to actually get anything done. Let's move to and see how this builds into a perfectly structured biological hierarchy. It's like a giant puzzle. We start at step 1, the individual cell. But when cells with similar structures group together to perform a shared job, they form step 2, a tissue. For example, epithelial cells group up to form an epithelium, which is just that thin layer lining your mouth and your intestines. Now, when different tissues group together, they build step 3, an organ. Think of your small intestine. It's this amazing combo of gland, muscle, nerve, and epithelial tissues. Then, step 4 is the organ system, where related organs team up. You know, like your heart and blood vessels forming your circulatory system. And finally, the whole shebang, step 5, multiple systems combining to form the complete living organism. It's an absolute masterpiece of biological scaling. So now that we know how they stack up, let's zoom inward to section 2, anatomy of a cell, the standard blueprint. We're going to explore the fundamental components, or what biologists call organelles, of a standard animal cell, and we'll begin right at the foundation, the cytoplasm. Think of this as the actual environment of the cell itself. It's this jelly-like substance that fills the cell and basically holds all the nutrient particles and organelles in place. This is the busy, active hub where absolutely crucial chemical reactions happen to keep the whole cell functioning. Now, holding all of that jelly-like cytoplasm together is the cell membrane. But listen, it's not just some simple physical barrier. It's the ultimate biological gatekeeper. It is partially permeable, meaning it acts like a microscopic bouncer, specifically controlling the movement of substances that enter and exit the cell. It's there to protect the delicate internal environment from all the biological chaos happening outside. Deep within that cytoplasm lies the command center, the nucleus. This organelle holds the ultimate blueprints for life, your cell's genetic material in the form of DNA, which is organized neatly into these structures called chromosomes. By holding on to this incredibly precious genetic code, the nucleus controls everything the cell does, including how it develops and exactly when it divides. So the crucial point is, all of this intense activity requires a lot of power. Enter the mitochondria. These are circular or sometimes oval-shaped organelles acting as the actual biological power plants of the cell. They are totally responsible for taking nutrients like glucose and literally releasing the energy locked inside them through a process called aerobic respiration. Without mitochondria, the cell simply powers down. Game over. Finally, to wrap up our rapid-fire standard anatomy, we have ribosomes. These are tiny circular structures that you can find either attached to a membrane or just floating completely free within the cytoplasm. Their absolutely vital job is protein synthesis. They're essentially microscopic little factories, constantly churning out the brand new proteins that the cell desperately needs to survive and, do its job. All right, now that we've got the basic animal blueprint down, it's time for a bit of a pivot. Let's check out section 3, plants and bacteria, the variations. The thing is, different life forms face completely different survival challenges, and they actually modify this standard cellular blueprint to stay alive. Just look at how plant cells differ from animal cells. Plants don't have skeletons, right? So they desperately need structural support right at the cellular level. They pull this off with a super tough cell wall made of cellulose that completely surrounds the membrane, basically preventing the cell from bursting open. Inside, they've got this massive, fluid-filled space called a vacuole that contains cell sap, which is just a mix of sugars and salts. This vacuole pushes forcefully outward against the cytoplasm and the cell wall, giving the plant cell remarkable firmness. And lastly, because plants obviously can't hunt for their food, they feature chloroplasts packed with green chlorophyll. These play the critical role of converting light directly into energy via photosynthesis. Talk about a neat trick. And this brilliantly illustrates an entirely different strategy when we shift over to bacterial cells. Bacteria are single-celled organisms. Now, like plants, they do have a cell wall, but it's not made of cellulose. But honestly, here is the absolute most fascinating variation. They do not have a nucleus. No way, right? Instead of a command center, their genetic material is just a single chromosome made of a coiled strand of DNA, just floating right there in the cytoplasm. They also utilize things called plasmids. These are small circular structures made of DNA that carry extra, highly useful genetic info that helps the bacterium survive and reproduce in some seriously tough environments. Which brings us perfectly to our final chapter today. Section 4, the specialists, form meets function. So we know what a standard cell looks like now, but in a complex organism, cells can't all just remain standard, blank templates. They have to specialize. But before they can even do that, we have to ask a really important narrative bridge here. How are new cells actually made in the first place? I mean, to get to 40 trillion, there has to be an incredibly active process of generation going on. Well, that process is cell division, also known as mitosis, and it's completely controlled by our old friend, the nucleus. The steps are incredibly rapid and precise. Step 1, the chromosomes inside the nucleus replicate. Step 2, the nucleus itself physically divides. Step 3, boom, 2 new cells are formed. Now, one cell might just keep the ability to divide again, but the other, it might take a completely different path. It may become specialized, taking on a very specific shape and biological profession to keep the whole complex organism functioning smoothly. Now, what's really interesting about this is how form meets function across these wildly unique, specialized cells. Honestly, treat them like characters in a story. Some act as protectors, like ciliated cells, which use tiny hair-like cilia to physically sweep dust right out of your lungs. Others are the ultimate biological messengers. Neurons, for instance, are incredibly long, so they can act like wires, instantly delivering electrical info from your foot all the way up to your spinal cord. You even have specialized transporters. Red blood cells actually ditch the standard cellular shape for this biconcave disc look, which is basically a donut without the hole punched all the way through, just to maximize their surface area for carrying oxygen using hemoglobin. And really, whether we're talking about human gametes packed with mitochondria for reproduction, complete with the sperm's enzyme-secreting acrosome, or a plant's root hair cells stretching way out into the dirt to absorb water and minerals, every single shape is a highly specific biological profession. When we step back and really look at all these specialized marvels, it brings us right full circle to the very beginning of our explainer. Like we said, any one cell on its own has essentially no impact. A single red blood cell isn't going to keep you alive. A single neuron cannot form a thought. But together, collaborating in vast, practically unimaginable numbers across perfectly structured tissues and organ systems, they form a complete living thing. They form you. It's truly a biological symphony. So I'm going to leave you with this final crazy thought to ponder today. With 40 trillion highly specialized, meticulously adapted building blocks working in absolutely perfect harmony at this very second, what unseen microscopic miracles are happening inside you right now? Thank you so much for exploring the incredible world of the cell with me today. And hey, keep questioning the absolutely amazing science of life.